People walk out feeling moved, feeling proud, and again, I'm just so honored to work for an institution and to have your collection a part of our institution where I can work with it basically every day. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. First of all, just your journey of collecting art is truly astonishing. It started off with you and your husband taking your honeymoon in New York and using the honeymoon money instead of going out and doing other things. You all decided to go to different institutions and galleries and museums in New York, and including the Carnegie here. And you all purchased your first art print, which was Pablo Picasso and even Van Gogh. You took that home, and that was the start of the journey of your collection. Would you mind just talking briefly of that kind of beginning journey all the way up until what's now known as the John and Vivian Hewitt Collection? What was going through your head, and how did you feel with starting this fantastic collection?
It started because I've always been interested in art, always appreciated art. I couldn't be an artist myself, but I loved my classmates beginning in grade school in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. And then when my husband and I married, we found that we had so many things in common. He went to Harvard and to New York University, and he was a native New Yorker, and he had the advantage of going to all those wonderful, wonderful museums in New York City and in Boston. I had the advantage only of two major museums, the Carnegie Museum here in Pittsburgh and the Butler Museum in Youngstown, Ohio. But when we married, we got some cash for wedding presents, and we honeymooned in New York, and instead of nightclubbing and dancing away the night and frittering it away, we went to museums. We went to the Whitney, and we went to the Museum of Modern Art, and we stopped over here in Pittsburgh and went to the Carnegie, and we bought good prints. And at that time, 1952, prints, 1949, prints were only $15 or $20, and we took them back to New York, back to Atlanta, where we were living then, and had them framed, and we lived with them, and we still have them. You would be interested to know that the equivalent of a master's degree, which I had from Carnegie Institute of Technology, was worth $75 a week, big bucks. I had worked overtime a little at the Rockefeller Foundation and had 40 bucks. We went to Haiti, and we always wanted to go to Haiti, and that was a second honeymoon, and we took our son with us, and he was 9 years old at the time, and I was going to have the Haitian women do me a couturier dress, and then I got thinking, heck, I can go to Orbax, or I can go to Alexander's or one of those knockoff stores and get a dress, but I can't get a painting. So I chucked the idea of buying a painting, and with our $40, we bought a Haitian painting called Sugarcane Dances, which happens to be my all-time favorite. We went to Haiti every other year from 1960 through 1985, and because we could afford to buy Haitian painting, we built a museum quality Haitian collection. What we did when my husband's health began to deteriorate, we sold that to private collectors or so forth. We did good works with that. being a native New Yorker, said to me, look, we know all of these artists. We better back up and collect some of their art while we can afford it. And we did. And he said, and it will have more focus if we do that. We knew through John's sister, Adele Glasgow, who was Langston Hughes' private secretary, confidant. We knew the artist, and we met. And then my cousin, Eugene Grigsby, who was teaching at Arizona State University in Phoenix, was working on his doctorate in New York City, and he knew Ronnie Bearden and Hale Woodruff and Spinky Austin and Jake Lawrence and Ernie Critchlow, and my sister-in-law knew Margaret Burroughs, who founded the DuSable Museum in Chicago. So we got to know them very, very well, and we didn't pay more than $500 for a painting, and our artists were not mainstreamed except for two, Romare Bearden and Jake Lawrence, and so we built our collection over the years, and I didn't want a dishwasher or an electric sweeper or a refrigerator or anything like that for gifts. No, indeed. Give me a painting. So what we did was for our Mother's Day, Father's Day, his birthday, my birthday, Valentine's Day. That's 5 paintings, 5. And then at Christmas time, we pooled our money and bought one that cost a little more. So that's 6 paintings a year. So from 1960, when we bought our first painting, we added to the collection. It's been a joy doing it. And thanks to Bank of America, and Hugh McCall, whom I think is on a par with David Rockefeller, with Lawrence Rockefeller, and with the Biggies. And I call him an emancipated Southerner. And his mother was an artist, and he wanted, when the collection was going to arrive in Charlotte, North Carolina, he wanted an African American collection, and so there were circumstances where things just fell into place, and I was very blessed and very lucky because one of my classmates at the Carnegie Institute of Technology was Mary Vassar, whose son was the curator of the collection in the Dayton Museum of Art in Ohio, and he wanted to buy the collection, but circumstances were such that he couldn't. We hired 2 brokers to put the collection on sale, and artwork was getting short shrift at that time, and so it didn't sell. But Nicky, and I knew Mary's son, and asked if he wanted to buy it. He was interested in buying it, but couldn't. But the head of the Dayton Museum of Art became the head of the Mint Museum in Charlotte, North Carolina, and took along with him his assistant as curator of American art. And so Todd Smith knew about it, and Todd Smith was also the curator for Hewitt Hall. Todd called Nikki and said, "What do you think if I would call the Hewitts? Would you mind?" And Nikki said, "By all means, call them." And he called us and said they were interested, and then they flew up by private plane the woman who happened to be the head of the foundation and the curator, and they played it close to the chest. We gave them the listing of these paintings, and these paintings hung in our living room and all over our house. We lived with them, and we would move them about and rehang them at times, you know, and you would get a different view of them. So Laura Fox and Todd Smith took the list and went through, and they said nothing. And then Laura Fox said to me, "We move fast when we move. We will get in touch with you." And about 3 months later, she called and she said, "Mrs. Hewitt, we're taking all 58 of the paintings." So, and from then on, it was between the Bank of America lawyers and our lawyer. And we asked that the selling price not be divulged, because people think we're multimillionaires, but they didn't realize that at that time, African American art and artists weren't getting big money for their art, you know. So the most we ever paid for a painting was $20,000, and we borrowed money from our church credit union to buy that, and that was the Henry Oswald Tanner painting. Okay, I talked enough.
There's a quote that you said over and over again, I've heard this: you do not have to be wealthy to collect good art. And that really sticks with me, and it sticks with so many others. And what would you say to the new collectors, or the people who are looking to start a collection, whether they're in their 20s or they're starting it in their 60s? What would you say to them?
When I the paintings, all 58 pieces of them, traveled to the 30 American cities while they were raising money to build the magnificent Gantt collection building in Charlotte. And I was lucky enough to go to each of the 30 cities, and I would talk to them and say, number one, you don't have to be wealthy to buy good art. You buy what you love, what really grabs you. And if you invest in your own culture and heritage and support local artists. They're very good artists locally. There were here in Pittsburgh. Richard Mayhew was good, but he moved to California, and he's one of the biggies now. And posters have value, and especially if they're autographed, signed by the artist, they have value. And as I say, we bought posters at first, and then we, as we got a little more affluent, or a little more, got raises or something, we would invest in art, you know. But no, buy what you love. Don't let a decorator tell you what to buy, or that this hangs over the sofa and can't be moved, you know. Well, you know, I've had experiences like that where a friend of mine who happened to be from Pittsburgh wanted a beard painting, and said, pick a beard and painting for me, and I did, and they were only $750 then at the time of that, which was expensive and all, but she turned it over to her decorator, and her decorator said, this doesn't match the decor in your house, so you didn't buy them. So you buy what you really love. And if your parents and your children have an inclination towards art, encourage them and support them. It's a noble profession. And right now, black art is hot stuff. It really is. And so that whole Hewitt collection that's up there hanging now would have increased in today's value 4 to 5 times of what we paid for it. So that will give you the idea of how Indian, I can't say the word, forget it.
American art, and more collectors are buying African American art. And what's amazing to me is that there's more and more African American collectors buying African American art. Can you speak on your thoughts of really this new movement of people continuing to buy African American art? But just as you said, black art is a hot trend right now. And what do you think about those who are buying African American art, and also those who are now becoming collectors, especially African American collectors?
Well, I think it's wonderful, and when the collection toured to the 30 American cities, hundreds and thousands of people saw the collection. It was white people, people of all ages, black people, and other than Romeo Bearden and Jake Lawrence, they didn't know anything about African American art, but they sure had got a good exposure this way. They knew the contemporary artists of Jake and Romeo, and so they started after every session that I went to, and when I would leave, young people would come up to me and say, I have this, and I think that I would like to, you've inspired me to start collecting. And I said, don't think about it, do it. Okay? So, yes, just start where you are.
Excellent. I think what really separates your collection from others, the relationship that you and your husband had with so many of the artists. Even speaking of your cousin, Dr. Eugene Grisby, I had the pleasure of seeing his show in the Art of Gant Center. His inspiration to you, and also introducing you to other artists. But quickly speak on the relationship you had with a few of the artists, in particular the artists who are here tonight, such as Jonathan Green and Tansley Virginia Smith.
I always loved the work that they did, and the relationship was a very, very good relationship. And we were in sync, and it's very important, as I said, to support them, our artists, and that's what we did. I was living, John and I were living in Atlanta, and one of my friends said, somebody gave me something, and it's some African art, and I just put it in the trunk in the basement. But they would go to Rich's department store and buy a plaster of Paris angel and put that on. You have to set your priorities. And also at that time, I had plenty of friends who would think nothing of spending $500 or even as much as $1,000 to entertain their bridge club. But they wouldn't spend that much money to buy a painting. And a painting it increases in value. We never bought paintings for investment. We bought them because we lived with them, we loved them, and that's what we did. I want to tell you, when you go upstairs to see the paintings, I want to tell you about 4 or 5 to pay particular attention to, because they have a Pittsburgh connection. I was reared in Newcastle as an African-American Episcopal person, and Henry Oswald Tanner was born in Pittsburgh, and his father was a bishop in the AME Church. And so that had a special meaning for me, because I loved the AME Church, although when I married John, he was a cradle Episcopalian, and I became Episcopalian. The family that prays together, stays together. So that's good. And at the Center Avenue YMCA, there was a Henry Oswald Tanner painting. What has happened to it, I don't know. But if it can be unearthed or found or whatever, that painting would be well worth $500,000 in today's market. It's well worth it. Let's see, I mentioned Tanner. The next person who had a Pittsburgh connection, Jake Lawrence. Migration series showed at the Center Avenue YMCA. Sherman Harmon was very, very wonderful in bringing cultural affairs to the city. And the AD of Ohio, on a Sunday afternoon, we would hear Pearl Buck or someone like that. But at the Center Avenue YMCA, the migration series was there, and not one art critic from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette or the Pittsburgh Press or any white paper came to see that. It wasn't until the head of the art department at Carnegie Museum came to see it. She flipped over it, she did. It was wonderful. Those paintings are now owned, half of them by the Phillips Museum in Washington, D.C., and half by the Whitney Museum in New York City. Let's see, who else do I want to mention? Elizabeth Kaplan. Elizabeth Kaplan received a scholarship from Carnegie Institute of Technology, and when she showed up, they wouldn't admit her because she was black. So finally, years later, and I think that Yvonne probably had a lot to do with it, approached Jared Cullen, whose mantra was diversity, approached him about her having been denied an honorary doctorate, having been denied admission, but he saw to it that she received an honorary doctorate. Now, Romare Bearden graduated from, I believe, Taylor Alderdice High School here in Pittsburgh. What was it? Peabody? Whatever high school. His grandmother, and he started painting here. And he gave the commencement address at Carnegie Mellon and also received an honorary doctorate. Now, Joan James, who was a teacher at Sewickley Academy, was started Black History Month, and she invited Ernie Critchlow to do a show there, Jimmy Denmark to do a show, and Tanksley to do a show. So Pittsburghers have seen some of the paintings that are represented. Do I want to mention anybody else? Have I forgotten anybody? At 97, you can forget what.
And Ann Tinkley's from here as well, so it's just an honor to have her here. She's, you know, this is her home, and Miss Ann Tinkley, so that's fantastic to have her here tonight. So just to wrap up the last question, I wish we had more time, but we're saving to wrap up the last question. So as the Hewitt Collection continues to travel all throughout the country, and again, it's housed at the Harvey B. Gantt Center, what do you want people, or what do you hope for people to walk away when they look at this collection, from the people from all different backgrounds, different generations? What do you hope that they can walk away
Oh,
from?
I want them to walk away feeling proud that these are American artists who just happen to be Black. To walk away with their heads high and feeling proud of themselves, and it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling, and I'm so pleased, and I am so thrilled for tonight. I love Pittsburgh. I always refer to it as way down south, up north. Now it was, and as I said, when Carnegie Mellon president met with the alumni recently in New York, it always bothered me that Carnegie Endowment was like it was racist because they had one at a time, or when I was there were four at a time, you know, and none of them a native Pittsburgher, Francis Inge and I forget the other's name, Malcolm Corrin from New Jersey, and the head of the drama department at Fisk University, and me, you know. And I loved Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh professional people, the lawyers, the doctors, the dentists, and especially the social workers. I became their pet. I had to succeed. I was on 24/7, and I had to be careful that I didn't bring anything of disgrace or anything to Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. But I did not bring anything up to disgrace because I said did sit in at Isley's. Can you imagine sitting at Isley in East Liberty and being denied service and things like that? But I tend to, those are seared into your memory, You never forget them, ever. But I don't dwell on them. I think of the good times I had in Pittsburgh, and I had a ball. One other thing I will never, ever forget, my classmates and my colleagues were very, very good to me and very nice. And but Pittsburgh wasn't ready for anybody to become a branch librarian. You got promoted. They weren't ready to promote me vertically, but horizontally. So I was being transferred out, you know. And my mother was very avant-garde. And Pittsburgh was a smoky city, a dirty city, a dusty city. And I suffered so from sinus. And she said, Vivi, you'll never do any good as long as you stay in this city. You've got to get out. And I wrote the damnedest letters of application to Howard University, to the Veterans Hospital in Tuskegee, and to Atlanta University. And I looked at the Howard University application, and I threw it in the basket because I said, I could never fulfill all the things that they want the librarian to be. Never mind that I was working in one of the top branches in the country. So, but anyhow, it's been a wonderful life, and I am thankful to my husband for marrying me and taking me to New York. And I had the positions that I had: Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie Institute of Technology, Council on Foreign Relations, the biggies. And but I never forgot Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh prepared me for making it in New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And